Hello, ladies, Gungans, and those beyond the binary. My name's Charlie Savage.
And my name's Ethan Odenthal.
And
What's
welcome
up?
to episode... What? I'm just having a day. Welcome to episode 20 of Outer Rim Radio, the podcast made by Star Wars nerds for Star Wars nerds. And today we're discussing Star Wars Tempest Runner, a High Republic audio drama set after the High Republic novel Light of the Republic. But before we get into that, let's talk about some of the recent Star Wars news.
Yeah. So, not much from what we really found, but it is actually some fun, big news going on. Just in general, a lot of stuff going on about Boba Fett and the Mandalorian and all that, but some of it is kind of speculation. But for hard details, we know season 3 of the Mandalorian has already begun shooting, so that's very
Yay!
fun. Obviously, Boba Fett. If you haven't heard, the new Boba Fett book of Boba Fett series has wrapped up for shooting. So that's now in post production. So we'll be seeing that soon, hopefully, which will be very exciting. But in the meantime, we will have a Boba Fett feature on Disney Plus named "Under the Helmet: The Legacy of Boba Fett," which will premiere November 12th. So it'll probably, I don't even know. I've tried looking into what that will be, and it's kind of vague from what I saw. But for the most part, it's, as they've been quoted, a special celebrating the origins and legacy of Star Wars legendary bounty hunter Boba Fett.
Which is...
So some people are saying this is going to be more like a retrospective piece just to catch up like your general audience on everything that's happened outside of just the movies. Some think it's going to be a little bit more like Disney gallery kind of stuff, like the making of. But it will have some like behind the scenes footage and stuff like that. So pretty cool.
Right. Yeah, I'm also just curious about how much they can really get out of that right now. Because I don't know. It'll be interesting. I'm sure they'll have lots in store.
Yeah, and that will be coming out on November 12th, like you said, which is Disney Plus Day. So that will be the 2-year anniversary of the streaming platform. So, which is pretty cool because that was the premiere. It was the anniversary of the premiere episode of The Mandalorian as well. But if you're wondering the date of Book of Boba Fett coming out, that'll be out December 29th. Last little bit of news we got going on here. Just some fun little tidbit kind of stuff. Greedo shot first. There's a Star Wars tabletop RPG that's just been announced. It's being produced by Edge Studio. They're a pretty famous maker of tabletop RPGs, but I think it's pretty cool that we're gonna get more canon RPG content like the heyday of Star Wars. So I'm pretty excited for it. Charlie and I will have the opportunity to finally make our Star Wars heist RPG and then turn it into a movie one day.
The fuck?
Sorry, I was reading chat for a second. Moobot scared the shit out of me.
I know, and I was like, I did all that. Jeez, I don't stream for a bit, and it gets on me.
And then Twitch gets hacked. But, like Charlie said earlier, the reason we're here today is to discuss Star Wars Tempest Runner, which, as Charlie said, is a High Republic audio drama set after the High Republic novel Light of the Republic. So, just for a little understanding of the plot, it's a canon audio drama.
Light of the Jedi?
I said Tempest Runner, did I?
No, yeah, you said that. You said it after Light of the Republic, wasn't Light of the Jedi?
Oh, did I write that?
You might have.
No, it's Light of the Jedi.
Jedi. I was like, wait a minute, I didn't read that book.
No, I just misspoke. All
right.
So cool. Yeah, it's Tempest Runner is a canon audio drama written by Kevin Scott. It's kind of an audio book, but it's being like I said, it's being described as more of an audio drama. It delves into this cutthroat world of one of the High Republic's greatest foes, the merciless Lorna D, a Tempest Runner in the band of raiders known as the Nihil. So basically what this book does
And
is
let's
it
keep
picks.
referring to it as a book.
Yeah, it's really hard because it's. So let's just describe the format first of all. So this was pretty unique. Essentially, it was like an old school radio drama, but released as an audiobook. So you
Yeah,
cannot find a written copy of this, which is pretty cool.
not yet.
Um, Not yet. We'll
I'm
see.
sure they will because I have Dooku Jedi Lost back there. They did the same thing for that book, I believe.
Oh, that very cool. Yeah, so it's kind of in many ways like a screenplay or like a stage piece and how it's brought across. So you have a lot of like scenes and it's very theatrical because it kind of jumps back and forth between different type
Yeah,
points in her life because the whole story is set around Lorna D, who she is, how she came to be, and what her life will be
yeah.
in the future. So Charlie, I just want to get your initial thoughts on Tempest Runner, given that it's such a different piece of Star Wars content and it's delving deeper into the world of the High Republic.
So I'm a big fan of this actually, but I will say the format is a bit jarring, and while it does like I like the idea more of like the more I guess like fluid conversation sort of dialogue. It feels a lot better in terms of the moment to moment stuff, but it's also on you have the other issue that comes with that where it is entirely difficult to keep track of what time period you're in because things keep going back and forth. And in addition to that, you don't have these stuff like in books and it was like or it'd be like set up over Ancestus. Instead it's like you
So
just have to
that's what you would call
differentiate
a
the voices.
dialogue tag.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
so basically you have to have a pretty clear idea about who's talking and the voice acting and the voice acting had to be for lack of a better term over the top enough that you could clearly distinguish who was talking at any point. So one of my problems with that is some of it was a little stilted. It was hard to get into purely because some of the characters were so out there in terms of voice acting. It was like they took a Japanese anime, did a dub of it from the 90s. It was super over the top voice acted in some
Yeah,
areas,
there were for sure.
which in many ways it was fun. That's the one thing I will describe about this. I enjoy listening to it. I travel for work a lot, so I was listening into this in the car. It's about 6 hours. It's 360 minutes. So it's 6 hours long in runtime. Um, and the problem also with Charlie talking about the pacing is that not only was the plot all over the place, basically popping back between scenes of her life, just kind of telling this narrative about who she is and what she came to be, but the pacing is a little bit wonky in that because sometimes you're just given a whole bunch of action at once and
Yeah.
then a whole lot of nothing. Whereas a book, you like to see kind of this up and down, but it's casually building up.
Yeah.
I don't
There's like
feel
an
like it.
upward trend. Like
Yeah, it just really didn't feel like it had the same structure as a book, which at the end of the day, as an audiobook, that's what it's serving to do.
yeah.
We're not listening to it as a six-part audio drama series. It's a long audio book,
4 hours,
and
which I listened to today.
I think at times it was just a little too out there, like I'm saying. But um, I think the medium was cool. I think it was a cool way
Yeah.
to tell a story. I think it was a cool way to establish new characters. And in many ways, I thought because there were so many, well, this is how the Empire would describe it, but alien characters, so many non human characters,
Yeah, I did enjoy that.
it gave you a lot of immersion to have such distinct voice acting. Um, the one I think was the greatest was Pan Eta. He in the previous novel, this is a mild spoiler for Light of the Jedi. In the previous novel, Pan Eta was betrayed by Lorna D. And Pan is this Doatan male, but because of his betrayal, he's Doatans are these big, giant, muscular creatures, just huge and strong, and they have so much presence. But then he's gravely injured and basically has to breathe through a respirator. And he's in so much pain, just basically living on to kill her, to come back and kill Lorna D.
Yeah.
And the way they voice acted it, the voice effects they did for that were superb.
Yeah, I really
It
loved that. That was the one character that I felt like throughout was at like all times like the easiest to keep track of because of that.
Yeah, Pan really just, how do I put this? Pan really made the audio drama at some points. It really
Yeah.
was great, and I had that pulled up who the voice actor was for that. Oh, it's Mark Thompson. I know that
Yeah.
off the top of my head. He did a fantastic job, but other characters, it became a little more stilted and it became hard to follow. So, in terms of formatting, the lack of an audio of a dialogue tag kind of suffered at sometimes, and I totally agree with Charlie on that. But I would love to see more productions like this, but I would love for them to be a little bit more like hour to 2 hour long short story style.
Yeah.
Like if we could get a compilation of voice acted audio dramas, maybe like 4 or 5, each an hour to 2 hours long, have it to be about 8 hours. That would be such a better format than what we got here.
Yeah.
Because like Charlie said, it really felt like you were bouncing back between so many times in her life, Lorna D, that I could easily follow the plot of her life. She starts out and she's in royalty, and then there's a rebellion that she's on the wrong side of, and she gets betrayed by the man she loves,
Sold into
and
slavery.
she gets sold into slavery, and she lives this life of cruelty. And from a plot point, if you were to just write out the plot chronologically, it was fantastic.
Yeah, exactly. But
It was so cool, and I just feel like their style they really didn't execute. And I really like Kevin Scott's writing. I mean, he usually knocks it out of the park. And this isn't bad. I enjoyed listening to it. I know
no,
I
there's
spend the
just like no visual to go with it. That's the biggest issue. It's just like it's hard to keep track of without any visuals.
yeah, I think if you're reading a book, and actually I think we talked about this at one point, Charlie. When you're reading a book at the beginning of a chapter, and sci-fi, this is a big trope. You might get a year at the top just to kind of
Yeah,
keep track of where you are and what space, what planet you're on. In this, it
exactly.
was a lot of, um, in many ways, that I give them credit because you have to um, show, not tell, a lot with this style.
Yes.
So to really describe the setting, they can't. And when we say this is an audio drama, I should clarify this before I get to my next point. What that means is it was completely sound and audio. Um, there is no like in between dialogue, describing the scene, saying what everything looked like, right?
Yeah.
It's purely dialogue. It's purely characters on a stage, and you're just kind of listening in. You are the fly on the wall, hearing on, you're listening through the keyhole into the next room, right?
Yeah.
And very impressive what they were able to pull off purely by sound design and voice acting. Because when we're in a jungle, you sound like you're in jungle. When you're in a fucking space battle and there's guns going off, you don't need it to be described because there's all those things going on.
Yep.
But when we get into the more highly complex parts of the story, there's a lot of action going on, where you're going back and forth between thoughts. When you're in a place that's a little too sci-fi things like a starship, a medical bay, it just gets a little hard to follow.
Yeah. I would entirely agree with that. Like you said, some of the things like really were really done really well. I think like the use of like I guess like blaster fire effects was done super well. Like especially when they basically have their impending coup or revolution or whatever what have you, um, coming. Like you can hear it building over time throughout. You can hear like the stress. You can hear the fact that they're going in a door. They're talking about all these things. But at other times, it's like I mean, like you said, I think like medical bays or like whatever, wherever they are in the ship, sometimes you're like, how do you like? There's like, for example, like she's in jail in this book, basically
And it's a
in
prison
confinement.
ship. She gets put on a prison ship.
Yeah, which I mean, my only thing that I'm drawing in from is Mando, and if that didn't exist, I don't know what I'd even be imagining.
Yeah.
But it's like, oh, they're talking in cells or between cells, so it's like the best you can do is like muffle the voice, or it's like just the dialogue, and it's done well. Like the dialogue's good, but it's like there are times where it's like I don't really have a visual for what this is. And
Yeah, because at times, the voice actors can only carry you so much. And part of that, I will say also, is um, when you need the voice actors to have such distinct voices and to sound like they are different creatures in this place, some of them are impossible to understand. I can't remember the character name, Charlie, off the top of my head, but essentially there was an older human, and she had this like uh, cast of there's this older human, and she had a bodyguard who was like basically like a slug like creature.
okay, yeah,
And so they had the voice actor had this like muffled
yeah,
gargle effect, and it was super alien, but I didn't understand
yeah.
anything.
You're like
It was really hard to follow.
yeah. When that happened, I was kind of like I'm gonna do like R2D2 and Wookiee rules and be like that's what he said. And it's like,
Yeah, it was completely just reading it from context, which is not the point, by the way. It wasn't
yeah,
like R2D2 rules. It was, it was actually like you could hear words in
yeah.
there. But that was unfortunately about it.
There were
Um,
words.
there were words being said, but we didn't understand them. But you know, is that the fault of the voice actor, or is that the fault of the person who's directing the voice
Or the
actors? Because
production, whatever. Yeah,
yeah, it's the production manager. Um, yeah, because I believe that was Seston.
I think so. Yeah, I think. Yeah, one of my favorite
So
things. Or go
yeah,
ahead.
no, you're perfect. Fine, keep going.
One of my favorite things about this book is that it very much humanized the Nihil. They were just super cruel antagonists. I mean, that's exactly what we saw in like Light of the Jedi and what we've seen throughout the High Republic in general. But I really like how this gave perspectives is that they actually all do have different backgrounds. We knew that they were like a wide cast of characters, but we really got kind of the sense that prior to this that was like they are legit just barbarians, no real background. They're just I don't know. They're they're just like pirates
Yep.
basically, but not.
So
They're no
they were
Honda
basically
Onaka, that's for sure. But
they were
we're
raiders
yeah,
more than anything.
yeah.
So
We're gonna do
for
drugs,
context,
steal, and kill.
yeah. So for context, for people who haven't listened to Light of the Jedi or listened to, it's a great audiobook. You actually should listen to it. But if you haven't
Yeah,
read it, listen to it, consumed it, whatever form of media you want.
perk.
In the Light of Jedi, they introduced this raider band known as the Nihil, and the Nihil are led by basically four leaders. One is there's three Tempest runners who each basically control a branch of the faction. So each of those faction goes out and raids and pays up in the hierarchy. So based on your ranking in each of those Tempests, led by a Tempest runner, you get a share of the pay, and you give a cut. You get so it's basically this hierarchy of raiders. So giving structure to anarchy, essentially what's going on. And
Yeah,
each of them
they
has a
literally like
flagship.
pay dues slash taxes, whatever.
They basically pay taxes. So it's all about anarchy is essentially what it is. And these three runners all have equal, but basically the person who's leading them is known as the Eye of the Storm.
Yeah.
You're right. Yeah, the Eye. He's
Yeah,
just known
because
as the Eye.
Markion, but it's father before him, is who we talk about in the book mostly.
Yeah. So that person gives them all paths, meaning hyperspace lanes that have not been charted. They understand hyperspace beyond what anybody else does, so the Nihil have an advantage. So basically, the Raiders who are more technologically advanced in some respects than
They kind of know how to
the
manipulate
Republic.
the systems, and I guess the way the author described it was it's kind of like being able to take back roads of hyperspace in
Yeah.
comparison to like what they have charted as basically the highways. But it's like
Yep.
if you can find out where points intercept, you can pull people out of hyperspace and do whatever.
Yep. And that's exactly what it is. So Lorna D is one of the three leaders of a Tempest. And the book basically is structured, and it doesn't follow this chronologically, but basically it was showing different parts of her life,
Yeah.
her childhood, her time in slavery and being just a criminal, her upcoming status as a
She
Tempest runner,
yeah.
and then basically the aftermath of everything that happened after the Light of the Jedi, and then her time as a prisoner.
Yeah. And then also her time being like some sort of like cadet, I guess, with
Oh
after
yeah,
being saved by Oppo Rancesses from slavery or whatever.
yeah, because they like had her do everything. She
Yeah.
was a
It's
criminal.
literally her life story. Like
Yeah, because she was being not trained by a Jedi because he she refused, he refused.
yeah. But he was
But
kind
he
of
kind
still a
of mentored
mentor.
her,
Yeah.
until she went off the deep end. Essentially, so much shit had gone bad in her life,
Yeah.
and she just goes crazy with all this power. Uh, so it was very interesting to watch this plot, but the kind of back and forth had us lost, like we were saying. Um, but some areas of that were stronger than others to me, and that's one of my biggest criticisms of this is when I think about what was really grabbing and fun. uh it was her time as a prisoner, it was her time getting to become a Tempest runner, and it was her time as a kid, because as Charlie's saying, all of this was really done to humanize the Nihil, and really just humanize two of the Tempest runners.
Yeah.
And I really like that because it showed how fucking batshit these people are. But at the same time, they have motivations that are understandable from like the leader's point of view.
Yeah.
Their followers are just crazy, but Pan just wants to be rich. And when he has his life taken away from him, all he can think about is killing Lorna, which is one of the major plots of the story.
Yeah.
And Lorna just kind of wants to be free and rule her own life because so much bad stuff has happened to her. So she's not a good character, but she's very morally ambiguous and neutral. She's just kind
Yeah.
of looking out for herself. But throughout the story, you kind of watch her develop like a moral background and like start to
Yeah.
care about people and these characters, which is very interesting, and it definitely humanized them. Um,
She
but
has that
at
one
the end,
friend that I think like sticks out the most, where she definitely does care about like this one person in particular that's in the story. I don't want to spoil it, but
yeah, and that's one thing you don't want to spoil. So I will say, in terms of character relationships, very strong story, super enjoyable. If you guys want to see like what Star Wars can handle in terms of voice acting and scene setting and just character relationships, this is what you want to listen to, because it's all dialogue.
yep.
It's all dialogue. It's all voice acting. So if you really just want to see all of that great voice acting and charm there, this is the book for you. But I will say, if you're looking for a complex story with a lot of action that's understandable, or something that's going to be an easy read, I don't necessarily know that that's it, because this was really pushing a lot of boundaries
Yeah.
um, for what Star Wars has been before. Because, like Charlie and I said, there's a lot of alien characters, a lot of stuff that's really dependent on sound, and it's just it's not visual. There's not a lot of action, and I love the Star Wars books. because it so beautifully describes action and allows you to paint the setting a
Yep.
lot of the time. And it can handle a lot of really strong scenes that movies can't. Whereas this is even more limited in its scope than a movie can be.
Right.
So it wasn't very detailed and not be well, it wasn't very detailed in what's going on, but it wasn't very varied in what's going on.
Right.
You know, if something happens, it has to be very high octane because you need to allow yourself to paint that quickly. There's not a lot of ramping in this story. Stuff just kind of going on
Fades
and
in
then
and out.
bam,
Yeah.
and then
Because it's like
you're
you
good,
get
Charlie.
like the flashbacks, like in conversation, like when at the I guess the second, not chapter but part or whatever portion where like she's basically being interrogated, and they're like, tell me about this, and it just kind of fades into dialogue from things before, and you just have to
Like
get your bearings and
literally
find the context.
mid conversation, mid sentence, and then she'll flash back like, and this could some of them were almost like 15 minutes long.
Yeah.
And it's like, "Oh, sorry, what?" And that's literally what the character will say, and then like describe how they're feeling, and they'll ask questions, and it can just be a lot to go from, "Ooh, that's really cool. We're in this place that she used to be, and this is how things were in her life." And then all of a sudden, you're back in a
So
prison
do you
ship
like
with
your
an air.
parents? And you're like, what?
How's your relationship with your parents? And you're like, "Oh my god, I'm gonna get sick." But as it was funny because at the beginning and at the end, things were a lot more reined in, which makes sense. You know, you wouldn't think there'd be a ton of back and forth when you're tying up all those ends or establishing all those plot points. But at the end of the day, you can have a strong beginning and a strong ending, but an, a soft middle is just gonna kind of mellow things out a little too much.
Yeah.
So I don't know, Charlie, like, would you recommend this for people who like audiobooks, who've got a car ride or want to listen to something while they work?
I definitely would recommend it. Especially I feel like for car rides. For me, it was kind of weird because I just kind of had to take time out of my day and was like, I'm going to do something else for 4 hours while I listen to this. But it was also like, I feel like a car ride would have been better because it's complex enough to where you actually have to actively think.
Hmm.
Like a lot of the Star Wars audio novels and stuff, I think you can definitely just kind of get away with, of like, oh, I'm doing whatever at work or I'm doing whatever on my PC. I can just listen to this while I do it. And it's like this one, it's like you really need to pay attention because it's not segmented quite as much as books. Like even like when I listened to Alphabet Squadron, it was like more segmented, and it was like, okay, this chapter is going to be this character, this chapter is going to be this character,
Right,
and it was
because you
like,
have scenes.
yeah, exactly, and it's
And
like
in
we're
a
describing
novel, a scene can be 15 pages. It could be a whole chapter, it could be part of a chapter, but
exactly
typically a chapter occupies a major scene. Whereas this was like, we're going in and out of scenes
like
maybe 4 to 5 times in a minute. You know, it could be a minute long. It could be 15 minutes long. It just really depends on what she's remembering and going back between. Now,
yeah,
it was never very abrupt, like we're getting 5 different places in five
no, yeah,
minutes, but it
it's
would be
just
like
transferring from
going
point
back
A
in
to
and out
B
of,
really fast in different
yeah.
intervals.
So I it's really hard to describe in some regards if you haven't listened to it. But Charlie, I listened to this and before we decided to do this, and I was just kind of like, Charlie, you need to hear this because this is different and it's cool, and we should talk about it on the show because it is all those things. And I think Charlie's exactly right. I think if I was not in the car, I wouldn't have enjoyed this as much.
Yeah, because it was like there was points where I was like listening to it and texted you. I was like, I think I might have fallen asleep for 15 minutes because I don't know what the hell happened. Like,
Yeah, my one problem with this is like the whole book. This is double edged. The whole book was based around a character, right? It's
yeah,
based around Laura D. She's the cover art. I mean, and
yeah,
she's really cool.
it's like how there's a Tarkin book and how there's like, yeah,
But with this and what we get from other books like Tarkin and with Thrawn, it actually does a lot to establish things in the plot of Star Wars.
yes,
This really doesn't do much,
in
if
the way of that.
anything, to affect the plot of Star Wars. Other, because the character we think is dead comes back and then is killed.
Yeah.
That's the biggest thing. Other than that, it's just establishing, but it doesn't establish like the big meaty facts of the Nihil. That's what we got in Light of the Jedi. This is kind of like a hey, if you know about it, feel free to listen to it kind of thing.
Yeah,
But,
exactly.
but I also recall this being kind of expensive on Amazon.com if you're not paying with
A token. Yeah.
a token. Let me check right now because I want to say it was like $30.
I thought it was like $22.50, but
$24.50
yeah. I mean,
for
I'm pretty cheap, so no.
yeah, and that's the thing. My recommendation here is like if you've got Audible, you've got um free books on whatever service you get your audiobooks for, dude, go for it. If you got a couple hours to spare, you got a long car ride, you're gonna have to drive back and forth to family, Thanksgiving, Christmas, whatever holiday you celebrate, dude, go for it. It's literally only the runtime it says everywhere is 6 hours, but I don't remember that actually being that in Audible, but it's good.
I
But
listen at like
24,
1.6 speed, so I got it. Like,
yeah. In terms of like, if I was going to recommend you were going to listen to anything in the High Republic area and you hadn't listened to anything else, go for Light of the Jedi. It was absolutely wonderful.
yeah.
I don't think this compares to that, but at the end of the day, like Charlie and I are saying, it's apples to oranges. We enjoy the audiobook versions of Star Wars books because it's highly produced. They have
Yeah.
the same sound design. The voice acting is really great because sometimes they split it all up and different people voice it. But for Tempest Runner, that's pretty much all you're getting is dialogue.
Yeah.
At least in a book, you have times where you're kind of listening to this painting of the scene. And when action happens, you could really see it in the theater of the mind, where really this is all about what you paint with it. They're
Yeah.
giving you characters who are telling you what's going on and giving you sounds, but when they're walking through the jungle, that's all in your head. If you get a picture of it, that's all in you. Nothing's being painted for you, which is a
Yeah.
good thing and a bad thing.
Yeah, because it is very much a different sort of medium than we're used to, and I think that's part of it's kind of like growing pains in a way for
Oh yeah.
something like that. Like it's something you just kind of have to get used to and adapt to. Not to say that it's like devoid of criticism, but it's also like how many things in this format have you really experienced before in your life?
Yeah, and I think for what I've heard of audio dramas, sound design's fantastic.
Yeah,
But I just think, there's probably better audiobook audio dramas out there. Because this was kind of all over the place. Now, if they were gonna say, hey, we're gonna release another thing in the High Republic or literally in any realm of Star Wars,
yeah,
they're saying the Empire, the Clone Wars, we're gonna release an audio drama. I'm very interested. I think it's a very fun format, and I really enjoyed it, and I enjoyed the time I listened to. Um, but I think really for my final thoughts, I would say it was a fun time, but not a necessary listen.
no, it's not necessary at all. I guess my only counter to that is that this is a really cool character that I think we're gonna see more of. So if you are interested in at the High Republic, this is definitely going to be a character that's going to be around, and I think the story is just worth getting to know. And I think this is the best way to do it because as much as you can, just get a like listen to like a YouTube video or a podcast or whatever, and listen to people talk about it. At the end of the day, experiencing the story in its proper format is the way to go. But if you want to take into consideration the price point and what other Star Wars content there is around, it's definitely not the first pick. But it's definitely unique and it's not like most other things.
Yeah, I agree with that. Totally with it, Charlie.
Alrighty.
Cool. Charlie, I think we got really all of our points out there without, totally spoiling the book. So,
Yeah, alright. So let's spoil the out of this.
no, this would be a spoiler free one because, I mean, to be honest, in this one, we were just mostly wanted to talk about the format.
Yeah.
Well, that's it for Charlie and I. So thanks for tuning in, everybody from all across the galaxy. If you guys like the episode, please consider subscribing to our podcast and sharing our podcast with a friend or a family member who might enjoy it. If you guys want to interact with us and help us make the show even better, consider interacting with us on our Discord or our Twitter using the links in our show notes. But everybody, thank you for tuning in. Goodbye, and may the force be with you.